I grew up in a small town where the door was never locked, where bicycles were left in the garden without padlocks, where everyone said hello as they passed. We knew his neighbors, their dogs, their habits. My entire elementary education was reduced to a single school corridor, barely 20 students per class, and always the same faces. From the 1st to the 8th grade, we all knew about each other, who had repeated, which parents divorce, and even who still wet the bed. Secrets never said out loud, but that everyone guessed. We spent our days playing baseball in the cul-de-sac, doing bike races behind the grocery store, inviting each other to birthdays with just popcorn, blossom jumps, and a rented VHS from that filthy old video store. It was the 90s. We lived for the Nintendo 64, the pods, and who imitated Jim Carrey the best. My parents trusted me. Maybe too much. By the 3rd grade, I was what was called ladge-gated. I would go home alone, warm up a rock pocket in the microwave, and sit in front of the Fox Kids cartoons until he came back. But despite that, I wasn't doing anything stupid. None of us really. There wasn't much to do wrong anyway. Sleepover nights were sacred. Every birthday was marked by battles of nerves, dripping pizzas and peace jokes, until one of us ended up crying or throwing up. Always the same reassuring decor of clean houses, moms in bathrobes, dads preparing burgers, and big brothers ignoring us. So when Mac Wellen invited our entire 6th grade class to his birthday, we thought it would be the same. A candy film can be the old gag of hand in lukewarm water. We didn't know what we were getting into yet. Mac had just arrived in town with his big brother Sam. Their house was in the seedy part of the neighborhood, where the roads weren't even painted and the gardens were just patches of dirt. Sam in 8th grade was nothing like a tall fat man with oily hair, an old mule on his head, still in his torn tank tops, his jaw clenched as if he was chewing on a vacuum. He wasn't really mean, but he made everyone uncomfortable. Just being there with Mac was different. Funny, eh? Unpredictable, a little crazy. He was afraid of nothing and didn't care what people thought of him. For a bunch of 12-year-olds, it was exciting. A direct ticket to nonsense that we would never have dared to do alone. So when he handed out his little printed invitations with monster trucks, we all said yes. Of course, not a single one declined. We arrived this Friday evening, sleeping bag on our back, noisy and sure of ourselves. Mac was waiting for us on the porch with his crooked smile. It was in the crooked side of the house, or rather the shack looked tired, sagging, almost abandoned. Lawn chairs dented in front of beer cans crushed in the window frame. A shutter hanging by a single hinge. Sam was standing in the doorway, arms folded, toothpick at the corner of his lips, not a word. Just his gaze following us inside, the air stinking, the laundry damp and the fat burned. The carpet in the living room was crunchy gray under our shoes. Mac's mother came out of the kitchen, hair pulled back, cheeks protruding, pink so thin you could see through it. Nobuha. Half the boys turned scarlet when they saw her. She handed us cardboard plates with cake already on them, saying, "Have fun tonight." Then she left again. A minute later, we heard a door slam and the engine of a car drive away. They go to the bar, so it's Mark. We have the whole house to ourselves, and weirdly, it froze me. I had never experienced a sleepover without adults within earshot, but no one protested. We didn't want to pass for babies. At first it was the blast, music blaring, sugar overdose, hallway brawl, Sam prowling, observing a weird smile on his lips whenever one of us fell or got hurt. Around 9 o'clock, Mac told us he had better than a movie. He took us to his room that he shared with Sam and opened the wooden chest. Inside were stacks of unlabeled cassettes, one of which he slipped into the VCR. The flickering image revealed a room, not a movie, a real room. And very quickly we understood. It was her mother naked, her father behind her, filmed like that. The whole room froze. Some snickered nervously, but no one was really breathing. Sam stood behind us, arms folded. "Do you like it?" My dad was filming everything and I wanted to leave right away, but my legs wouldn't move. Mac was laughing. What if we looked at others? He took out sex toys out of a drawer, dirty stuff that smelled like latex, fronts that he swung around. A boy grabbed them and then let go like it was hot. Then Sam pulled out a small wooden box. He opened it inside, a real revolver, shiny, oiled. He lifted it towards the ceiling, then towards one of us. Bang at! He screamed dry. Everyone jumped. Mac chuckled and ran away. Charged, but his voice was shaking. Sam began to circle, pressing the cannon to our foreheads, one after the other, when it was my turn. I didn't breathe the cold metal on my skin, the clatter of the dog arming it gently and without a smile. What if he whispered, then he moved on to the next one. After that, nothing was the same. The games had ceased to be games. Sam kicked the starving dog who barked too much. Mac caught a mouse in a shoebox and tossed it into the sink grinder. The noise, I still hear it. Then a small snake came out of an aquarium and ended up in the microwave. Sam looked away. The point of no return came when they set fire to the neighbor's trash can with flammable liquid. Flames erupted. Sam spun around, barefoot, laughing. The rest of us were staring at each other. It was no longer rebellion. It was no longer nonsense. It was something else. I took my bag, tightened my shoelaces with trembling fingers, and left his house without a word. The night outside seemed immense. I didn't run. Every step resonated. I felt like they were following me, or worse, that something from the movie had crossed the screen and walked behind me. 8 blocks away, I walked through the door of my house. My parents were in front of the news. My mother was knitting. My father was drinking his tea. When they saw me, they immediately understood. My mother hugged me. My father turned off the TV. I told them everything. The gun, the tapes, the animals. Anything, but I couldn't put into words Sam's look, Mac's empty laugh. The next day, the school and the police were already aware of it. Other parents had called. The Wallen house was soon overrun by cops. The tapes and tears were seized. Sam was sent elsewhere. Mac suspended. The dog was taken to the pound. The house was put up for sale, then walled up, finally razed. Today there is not even grass growing there. We never really talked about it again, but neither of us came out unscathed. I changed that night. I learned to lock my doors, listen to the sound of locks, stay away from parties and nights out. A part of me died that night, but another was born, more suspicious, more lonely and honest. I think I prefer that. I've only been to one sleepover in my entire life. One. And that was more than enough. It's not that my parents were super strict or religious, no. They just wanted to know the families I slept with. After that night, they made sure I would never spend the night at anyone's house again. It was in 5th grade. The kid's name was Tommy Jurgens. Everyone loves Tommy, a loud-mouthed little nervous kid with a false self-confidence who was going to know why it worked. He knew all the cheat codes on PlayStation and knew how to spit straight into the sky at 250 meters and then catch his drool in his mouth. That kind of kid we thought was cool, but we didn't really know Tommy. Not really. A good part of what made him cool came from the fact that he was raised by a bunch of complete nuts. Sometimes we had clues. He never brought lunch, just crumpled bills and scratch tickets. He'd say grown-up things like, "My mom's boyfriend came out again," or "Uncle Mike got busted in Flagstaff." At the time, it was all over us. Tommy what? He had been with us since grade 2. He didn't have that many close friends, but we all wanted to hang out with him. His life seemed electric, different. So when he handed out invitations written in marker on a notebook sheet full of mistakes, he said yes without even asking my parents. He wasn't thrilled to see her, but the name Jürgen vaguely said something to them, so they relented. I think my mom talked to her mom 90 seconds straight before she agreed. "Okay, but if anything seems weird to you, you call us. I really mean it." Friday arrives and we all get off the bus, excited. Tommy lives on the edge of town, in a spanking house, with 4 pickups in front and 2 rotten boats in the yard, not close to seeing the water again. The garage is open and I swear a real drum kit is being assembled. Guys lugging around, amps inside. We haven't even taken our bags out yet. Tommy greets us on the porch with his usual smile. "You're going to blow a cable." He wasn't lying when he came in. I felt like I was at a party at my uncle's house, not a kid's birthday party. Already, there were adults, friends, relatives, I imagine, drinking, smoking, and laughing in the living room. Without the slightest attention to us, piles of beer thrown on the table. In the kitchen, the hallway smelled of burnt popcorn, drowned in thick grass smoke. At the time, we were too young to understand exactly what was wrong. It just seemed chaotic. Loud music, iced soda, big yard. We thought we just landed on the coolest birthday in the world with no idea what was in store for us. The courtyard looked as big as a football field, a rusty trampoline, a crooked foot that leaned over 2 components. Someone had taped an old dart target to a half-dead mesquite. The ground, a patchwork of dirt and thin grass strewn with empty cans. In the center, a cooler full of orange soda and RC cola, like a treasure that was looted immediately. Then the group landed, I'm not kidding. A real local band, 4 guys in ripped jeans and dark glasses, carrying their equipment up to a stage, a plywood plate and placed on cinder blocks. There was a shirtless vest underneath. It was called Cold Tree. The singer yelled into the microphone, "We're going to wake up this city," a scream so high that all the dogs in the neighborhood began to bark. You give love a bad name. All the CM2 farts. Even the timid ones jumped to the beat as if it were a real concert. We were 11, drinking sodas, throwing darts at a tree, listening to a Bon Jovi cover band, while some unidentified drunk guy at the battalion grilled hot dogs on the front porch. It was insane, and yes, a little great. When the sun went down and killed him, electric fly turned on, the mood changed. The adults were getting pasty. We were only a few beers away. Bottles of hard liquor came out. I saw a guy pour a clear liquid into a red cup, then stagger to the garage. Inside, other guys, in their 20s I'd say, were playing darts for money. Tickets spread out on a washing machine like a poker table. Tommy's father, or whoever was thought to be his father, was a massive guy, glistening with sweat, cargo shorts, big chains around his neck. He was barking on a certain channel about cheating. "You crossed the line, you asshole, I saw you," he said. Shane, a tall, skinny, red-haired guy, was holding a dart as if he were going to put it in an eye. A second target was hung in the garage for the adults. We hung there, planted, taped. Tyler blew, "We shouldn't get out of here, we didn't have time." Shane threw his dart, missed the target completely, and Tommy's father pushed him hard. Shane tripped. Knock over a toolbox and then hit back with fists. The next 10 seconds were nothing but noise. Metal clashing, flesh hitting, glass shattering. A guy was thrown against the water heater with a bullet ball. We were frozen. Some of the kids started crying. The fight stopped when Tony's mother, who was chaining cigarettes on the front porch, came out screaming to stop everything. A raspy voice, "Saddle and vinegar." I saw him dig his nails into Tommy's father's arm and pull him out by the skin. The party starts grumbling again and the group has relaunched the song as if nothing had happened. From there, the line between fun and dangerous dissolved within minutes. Soon after, the drugs came out. Not a discreet little joint of the real can. A coffee table was cleared and Tommy's mother spilled a sandwich bag filled with green grass and a pile of white powder. I thought it was flour for a second, but it wasn't. A certain Zek started chopping this up with a blockbuster card. "Don't worry, it's not coke, just a little go fast like that makes it okay." Another adult, I think. The aunt was puffing on a glass pipe singing Panama. Tommy came back from the garage with a big silly grin and a big joint like candy. We stared at him mute. "Bro, shoot on this." and he said to Cody Anderson. Cody retreated like a viper. Tommy shrugged, pulled a tough, coughed like a dying man, then laughed until he collapsed. At that moment, I was still amused, in a dangerously tightrope walking way, as if we had slipped into a forbidden movie and were holding our breath to avoid getting caught. It was crazy, yes, and not terrifying yet. We ended up outside, slumped on lawn chairs, drinking lukewarm soda, watching Colt. Free was finishing his set. The adults were stoned, staggering, laughing, forgetting their own names. Someone was vomiting dry in the bushes. I was telling a ghost story when screams were heard again. Same voices. Tommy's dad, and obviously, Shane. You rolled me. No, you're just bad at darts, Shane. Then another crash, a scream, people running. We got up. 2 kids ran to the side of the house. The rest of us went around the garage, holding our breath. I could already feel the air changing, this heavy that falls suddenly. Shane was on the floor, blood on his shirt. Tommy's father held a folding knife with a knuckle guard. Shane was moaning, hand on his side. Someone screamed, and there, bang, bang, bang. 3 real close shots, deafening. Total chaos. Tommy's mother went out on the lawn in tears. One of the musicians tackled the gunman and managed to snatch the gun from him. No one was hit by miracle, but he had casings on the floor. The charm was broken. It was no longer a party. It was a war zone. The cops arrived in less than 10 minutes, sirens blaring. I got red and blue rainford on the lawn, like a crime club. I was still in the backyard, my shoes in my hand, trembling to the point that he could no longer storm the stage. Cody Anderson was crying. We just got shot. We just got shot. They gathered us on the sidewalk. Oh yes, don't move. The neighbors were out talking to the officers, pointing at the house as if it were a soap opera. A woman wrapped in a blanket asked me if I was okay. I nodded. That was wrong. The parents arrived one after the other. Headlights lined the street. The look on my mother's face when she saw me, I will never forget. No questions, she hugged me as if I had just returned from the front. Tommy's dad got handcuffed and loaded up. Shane left in the ambulance, conscious but bleeding through a pack of floppy pads pressed against his ribs. Other adults got questioned in the driveway. A guy walked out before giving his name, disappeared with a backpack full of I don't want to know what. We didn't go back to school on Monday, and neither did Tommy. The rumors buzzed. The gun was stolen, the powder from Lamed, a musician and extoller. I didn't care, I just wanted to forget. No way. My mother told me at school that I'm not allowed to sleep at anyone's house anymore, not as long as you live with me and don't pay your bills, she said. At the end of the discussion, I did not protest. Last I heard, Tommy and his family moved to Yuma. He never came back. And like I said at the beginning, I've never done a sleepover again, ever. My wife and I were trying to have a child. We were delighted when he was born. He was wanted and loved. We covered him with affection. I really did my best to give him a happy life. But since the day we brought him back from the hospital, he has been unhappy and cried for 13 months. I'm not exaggerating, 13 months without interruption. He cried until he had no voice. You could see her little face wrinkling up without any noise coming from her totally rock mouth. Sometimes he literally cried in his sleep. I've never seen or heard of another child being able to do that. We took him to the doctor of specialist doctors. We tried to change his diet. We even held him in our arms, rocked him, offered him toys. We wrapped him up and tried to soothe him with music, everything we could think of, but nothing worked. 13 months of gnashing teeth with no sleep, hell. Once he got past the crying stage, we thought we were out of it. But it soon became clear that for some unknown reason, He was just angry to be alive. I've never seen this kid have a real happy smile, and all the time I've known him I have. Seeing a vicious and horrible smile spread all over his face, taking a perverse pleasure causing pain and suffering in a single second, he would have made even a single genuine smile showing that he was happy. Not once was he not interested in anything positive. He was fueled by hatred, and everything he did was oriented towards Versa. And as soon as he could walk, his only mission in life was to create stories. He tried to break everything within his reach. He crushed them, chewed them, flushed them down the toilet, whatever he could do. After a while, he figured out how to remove his diaper and took great pleasure in pooping and pissed wherever he could. After a while, he realized that he could hide it and started urinating and defecating in places where they wouldn't be found right away, or by crushing them on the carpets, which made cleaning even more difficult, making the house. When he grew up between the ages of 9 and 15, he would pee and shit in our bed until we put a lock on our door and he couldn't get back in. Then he took a shit in the hallway across from our room. This biological warfare started when he was 2.5 years old, and he never got out of that phase. I'm going to try to pick up the pace because I could literally go on for days on this subject, but as he grew up he became more and more unmanageable. He was biting, kicking, screaming, claw and spit on anyone who tries to do anything to him. He was expelled from school twice before the age of 9. They let him come back, then sent him back for good. They next put him in a special class that kept him away from the other students. We had to install a door and lock in the kitchen because he always had knives and used them to reach walls, furniture, or to chase people with them. When he was 10, he stabbed me pretty hard in the hip and butt. I still have big scars from it. It became even darker. This time he was setting things on fire and torturing local animals. I take this opportunity to get ahead of the mountain of messages I may receive. Yeah, we've been in fucking therapy with the kid. He saw a psychiatrist twice a week, and God only knows how many different medications he was prescribed. Over the years, nothing worked, therapy didn't work, and drugs didn't do anything. Nothing fucking works. It was like a poisonous cloud of hatred and fury that fell over everything in his reach. When my son turned 16, my wife got pregnant again. I can't tell you how different our reaction was. This time, instead of joy, we felt horror. This pregnancy was not planned, and we had no idea what to do. My son had been an endless nightmare for 16 years. We couldn't bear the thought of doing it all over again. From the beginning, we have considered terminating a pregnancy, but at first, it is not so easy to do nowadays. And secondly, my wife is very opposed to this idea. We talked about several options, but in the end we decided that my wife would have the baby, and if it got bad, we would put him up for adoption. We knew we couldn't relieve that another child who would be similar to our son. We had a daughter. She was normal. Suddenly we saw what our life should have been all this time. She laughed at everything. She suckled without biting. She obviously had no teeth, but you could see that she was just trying to eat and not rip off her mother's breasts. After 4 months, she was doing her nights. She was happy, completely normal. I can't describe the relief and happiness we both felt. I have no words for it. That's when I believe I started to drift away from my son. Before, no matter what mistakes I may have made, I was always trying to do the best I could for my son. I am convinced I tried to help him, love him, and take care of him. I really tried, but when my oldest daughter, my wife, and myself instinctively turned to her, she became ours. Enter not out of malice, but because she was easier to live with. She was so happy and sweet. Every moment I spent with her was magical. I understand it was wrong, but honestly, we couldn't help ourselves. I don't have a better explanation than that. My son had nothing to do with my wife's pregnancy. I really don't know if he understood what was going on, but when we brought our daughter home, he started acting even worse. I didn't think it was possible, but it seems to have gone up a notch. At that time, he was about 17. We were all arguing. Every day, usually after an argument, he stormed out of the house and disappeared for hours or returned the next morning. It was a relief. Axel started looking forward to our arguments because it allowed him to get away from us for a while. After the birth of our daughter, my relationship with my son almost completely disappeared. Our only real interactions were yelling at each other. My wife was even worse with him. She didn't feel anything at that time. If our son walked into the same room as her, she would just stop what she was in to do it and start screaming, "Get out of my sight," until he leaves. He started spending more and more time out of the house, which was a blessing for us. I had no idea what he was doing out there. We were just glad it wasn't inflicted on us as a result of our son's behavior. We had invested heavily in locks placed throughout the house. All the thin, cheap interior doors have been replaced by thick, dense wooden doors that cannot be pushed in and equipped with locks, including my wife and I. Keys? I know this may sound extreme, but locks and heavy doors were the best way we could find to create a safe space to protect us from it. Again, before I got too many messages, I wasn't locking my son in his room like some kind of prisoner. He had a free field in the house and could come and go as he pleased. My wife and I locked ourselves in rooms to protect ourselves from him. In fact, we were prisoners in our own home. On the day in question, I had a fight with my son in the morning. My wife and I were enjoying a little and quiet in the kitchen while our daughter slept. All of a sudden, my daughter started crying. Any parent with young children can tell you, you get used to your child's crying and you can guess after a while what he needs. It cries differently when they are hungry, if they need to be changed, or if they are just restless and want to be rocked. Babies can communicate quite well before they talk. This scream, however, was none of that. It was a cry of terror. The second we heard it, my wife and I got up from our chairs and ran. The door was locked, of course, and it took a few seconds to find the right key and open it. My son was in the room. We were living in a bungalow, and that bastard had climbed through the window to get to her. He was standing over his crib with a meat knife in his hand. I have no idea where he got it. He wasn't one of ours. We controlled our knives very carefully and always kept them in locked drawers. I think he may have taken it from one of our neighbors. He had already punctured her skin twice, once on her stomach, the other on her arm. I could see blood when I entered the room. He was rubbing the back of the knife over his face. No cut. He seemed to tease her as she screamed. He looked up at us and smiled. Before I knew what I was doing, I was already running to get between them. I didn't think, I just moved instinctively. Despite that, my wife arrived before me. It was like in a time-lapse movie. She reached out to our son and released her hand when she saw the knife across the room, then pushed it with all her weight. It flew out of the crib and bounced against the wall. I held my daughter while my wife scanned us. I could see her trembling, almost convulsing. I remember the smell of the room, the sound of my daughter screaming and moaning, the look of my son standing there empty, nothing at all, like dead. There was nothing in his eyes. Not the slightest emotion. He looked like an alien to me. I watched my wife take a step towards him. I could have reached out and stopped him, but I didn't. She took another step closer to him. Again, I could have stopped him, but I didn't. So far, could you imagine that my wife was a typical woman, small in stature, sensitive and delicate? That's not the case. My wife is admittedly a small size, but she is not sensitive or delicate and never has been since I've known her since she was a teenager. My wife is a boxer. MMA didn't exist at the time, but karate and boxing were very popular at the time, and my wife was a very talented amateur. She weighed a little under 60 kilos and had a lot of muscle, and she knew how to hit. At the time, I was 30 kilos heavier than her, and I have no doubt that in a real fight between her and me, she would have beaten me to a pulp. Neither of us would have raised a hand in anger over our son before, but something broke in her that day. All those years of anger, pain, grief and frustration erupted when she hit him. His head snapped back abruptly and blood began to flow from his nose. He barely reacted. He just looked at him with this shocked expression, as if he didn't know how to react to what had just happened. She waited a second, then hit him again. I could have reached out to stop her. I could have dragged her out of the room, taken her away and calmed her down, but I didn't. I stood there and watched her as she began to systematically pulp him into mush. Every time he raised his hands to cover a part of his body, she had been sending 100 shots to another part of his body, his head, his body, over and over again. He started screaming, crying, screaming for her to stop. It was the most sincere reaction he had ever had in his entire life, but she didn't stop. I watched it, increased its course, hitting harder and faster, working it like a punching bag. He tried LA. heat back, but she dodged it easily. She was on autopilot and reacted like training. I stood there watching the scene for a few minutes, then turned my back on them. I got my daughter out of the room, took her into the kitchen and gave her a bath in the sink. I discovered that he had cut her a third time on the sole of her foot, but all the cuts remained superficial. I cleaned her up and held her until she calmed down. Then I put bandages on his wounds in our room. I could hear my son screaming and insulting my wife horribly, telling her he was going to cut off her head and sodomize her corpse. After a while, I didn't hear him say anything. I didn't even hear him scream. I guess he must have been knocked out, but I could still hear my wife hitting him. It lasted a very long time, long enough for my daughter to fall asleep in my arms. I sat at the kitchen table waiting for my wife to finish. Finally, she came out and sat across from me. His hands were swollen and red, his face and arms covered in blood, his chest heaving. We looked at each other without saying anything. After a while I asked him, "Is he dead?" She looked at me and said, "I hope so." I nodded, and that was all there was to say on the subject. I totally understood how she was feeling, and I agreed with you. I didn't know what to do, so we just sat and waited in silence. My wife obviously started crying and went to take a shower. I stood there holding our daughter in my arms. Then after a long time I heard moans and sobs coming from the bedroom. Turns out my son wasn't dead. I went in to see how bad it was and was pretty ugly to look at. I've never seen a more merciless blow in my entire life. He was lying on the floor, rolling in all directions, his face bloody, his nose was totally crushed, and his two eyes completely closed and swollen, already starting to black. I could see that two of his fingers were bent at weird angles. He also peed in his pants. I think he must have been missing teeth, but I didn't see any on the floor, and I couldn't see the inside of his mouth either since his lips were all swollen. For having told my wife about it later, I know she wanted to. Breaking every part of his body, focusing more on his lungs, she told me that she punched his breath repeatedly until his legs couldn't take it anymore, and that she continued to attack him long after he passed out. When my wife got out of the shower, I still didn't know what to do with our son. I didn't know whether to call the police or an ambulance or take him to the hospital myself. I honestly had no idea what to do. After a while I realized that I no longer cared what could happen to him, and we decided to let him live or die on his own. There was a wall suite in the basement that we never really used. My wife, daughter, and I moved there. We just allocated the top floor of the house to my son and locked everything down, his parents, our lives entirely. There was plenty of food in the upstairs cabinets, enough to last 2 weeks or more. We had the bathroom in the basement, a small kitchenette and a separate entrance, allowing us to stop going upstairs. We decided we were done with him. I figured we'd let his food run out and see what happens. Over the next week, we heard him move upstairs. I think he spent most of his time lying in bed recovering. I used to go to work staying alert in case he attacked me in the driveway, but he never did. My wife stayed at home with our daughter. She never took her eyes off her. One night we heard him go crazy, hitting and destroying everything that might be in the house, but we didn't react. He never tried to get down or get near us. I think he was afraid my wife would finish the job after 3 weeks in the basement. It had been several days since we had heard anything coming from above. I ventured to the main floor of the house. The place was demolished and there was no sign of my son. He was gone. It took months to repair the damage he had done. There was food and shit all over the walls, broken glass on the floor, holes in the drywall. He had demolished everything, ripped the lino in the corner of the kitchen and emptied the foam fire extinguisher in the living room. I was grateful that he didn't burn the house down. I still don't know why he didn't. He had no hesitation setting fires in his childhood. Later, I feared daily for our lives, expecting his return for vengeance. 3 years after escaping, we finally felt a small sense of safety. Born in 1971, my son's destructive tales feel a lifetime away now, yet the shadows persist. So 70 this year, and my wife passed away from cancer in 2016. My daughter is 34 now. I moved in with her and her husband after my wife passed away. I have 2 little girls who are my greatest joy. I see a therapist twice a month to talk about it. I don't know where my son is. The last time I saw him, he was lying on the floor, bloody broken. I haven't heard from him since he left over 30 years ago, but I don't want to. I carry a lot of guilt since that time and a lot of conflicting emotions. I didn't beat him myself, but I let it go, and I thought he deserved it. I didn't try to kill him, but I would have been happy for him to die. In a way, I hope he was able to overcome his demons and lead a normal life differently. If he wasn't able to change, if he stayed the way he used to be, then I really hope someone killed him. And it doesn't matter how it happened. I just wish he wasn't out there hurting other people yet.